Okay, I'll call the meeting to order and like to start by acknowledging that this meeting is respectfully held on the traditional territory of the Sycas First Nation, on whose land we live, work, and play. We have an agenda circulated. Would somebody like to move adoption? Move. Seconder? Second. All in favor? Carried. 3, proposed capital project descriptions for 2025, 2026, and future. Who's leading this?
Two things. Number one, I think that this at least begins the discussion of the many infrastructure projects that are necessary. Some of them urgent, some of them just are important replacement projects for here. It coincides with our new level of funding, which, to be honest, the Northwest Resource Funding Agreement is a game changer for the community. With our first 5 years of annual payment. But with that comes some requirements. And so one of them is to develop a long-term development plan. Again, the funding is infrastructure funding. So they want us to come up with at least 5 years, 5-year plan for infrastructure activities that our community, because we're voting that we have all kinds of infrastructure deficits. We do not yet have the utilities master plan. It's not anticipated until the end of February. We are sure that that is going to identify additional projects. But at this point in time, what we've done is administration and staff have met. We've said we can identify a really fulsome year one, which is 2025. And some of them are so big they're going to carry over into 6. So we can at least start the discussion with things that we know are important to deal with this year. And so I'm going to turn it over to Will for a description of the different projects that we're identifying.
First off, we've got the north side lift station. So the lift station is located along Reed Drive. And what we're looking at doing there is a complete replacement of the station. So that will include the wet well components, all of the pumps. We're looking at bringing the valve chamber above ground, which will reduce the need for confined space entry in order to do repairs and maintenance, as well as the construction of a building that will house the electrical controls, as well as the genset that will go along with this. Rather than going with a kiosk in inclement weather is challenging for staff to be able to do the work if necessary on electrical components. So by bringing it into a building, it makes it that much easier. It also makes it so that the generator is inside of a building, which again makes it easier for maintenance and those types of activities. It also allows it to kind of blend into the neighborhood, which is always ideal in a residential location. Yeah, so done this in a couple of different municipalities, and it really works out well. The other portion of this project will be the force main. So this extends from the sanitary pump station on Reed Drive. Will go under the river. The section going under the river is about 280 meters long, and there's about a 10-meter difference below the bottom of the river in order to make sure that we don't have any material come out as they're doing the drilling aspects of it. And we're looking at extending that all the way down to Victoria, where the previous force main projects had been completed. This will allow the pump station to actually pump all the way from that location all the way to the lagoon system, and it'll bypass the Butte pump station. So that'll free up capacity for additional development downtown, additional development in the southern areas below the highway, on the south side of the highway. So it really kind of opens it up and takes a lot of pressure off of that system. The next one is the co-op sanitary main replacement. So this has been a project that's been on the books for a number of years, and for some reason it hasn't been completed. It is going to be a challenging one because it does go right across the parking lot for the co-op. So we'll have to coordinate that work with them. It's about 120 meters of 375 millimeter diameter pipe that needs to be installed, as well as 3 manholes. So this section of piping had some degradation over the years. There's been some sagging. It's also under capacity. So by us replacing this section, it should allow us to be able to have additional flows that will be able to get to the Butte station. The next project is the Clark Avenue water main replacement. So this was identified in previous studies as an important section for replacement to replace aging infrastructure in the area. And it's actually going to be combined with the next project, which is the 5th and 6th sanitary project, because they overlap. So the 5th and 6th sanitary project is actually a rerouting. There is a main that goes between 5th and 6th that is going between properties right now. So of course that makes it very difficult for us to do maintenance on that line or any kind of repairs. So we're looking at relocating that out onto Clark and utilizing the opportunity of that road being torn up in order for us to do the sewer rerouting through there. There's a small amount of sanitary main that will have to be regraded in order for it to go in the opposite direction it currently does. But it'll also get rid of that that location where it has to go in between those houses. As you can imagine, excavating in a location where you're between households could be very challenging, very disruptive to the neighbors. So this will help to alleviate that. The existing line will be capped and slurry filled so that it doesn't cause any issues in the future. So that kind of wraps up the major utilities ones on the top. Then we move into the demolition projects that we have. First one is a quick save. We have gotten some budget numbers that have been brought forward for that, but we still haven't decided on exactly how we're going to proceed. But we're looking at doing that. And then you've already given approval for the United Church demolition. So that'll be moving forward for sure this year, but we're still taking a look at some options in regards to the quick save. The next project is the pedestrian network. So this is the installation of curb gutter and sidewalk. There's about 220 meters of that in 2 segments, and then 180 meters of 3-meter wide asphalt pathway. So on this section, there is a section of Riley that hasn't been developed or hasn't been completed yet. It's not paved, but we're still going to put curb and gutter and sidewalk through that section. This will allow pedestrians to get from the highway area to the base of the staircase, and people can utilize the staircase if they're able-bodied. Otherwise, they'll be able to use the pathway, which is the 3rd Street section that is undeveloped at this time. Once they get up to Chilco, we will switch back to curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and that'll extend to the 4th Street sidewalk that's in that section. So this is an alternative path that we had decided to move forward with to get pedestrians away from the highway. The other alternative that was brought forward in the pedestrian network study was to continue it from that location, but connect between Riley and 4th along the side of the highway. So as you can imagine, with the truck traffic along that section, with winter conditions, all of that would make it very challenging for the pedestrians and also for maintenance crews. You get a windrow of snow that's along the side, possibly going onto the sidewalk, then we're trying to pull it off and deal with it. This will just get rid of all of those headaches that we thought would be a lot better alternative. The length of it is very similar in nature, and it'll take a little bit of education of pedestrians in order to encourage them to use this path rather than the highway. So we're looking at some measures of putting some signage up and recommending the alternate route. As was discussed in the last meeting, we're looking at the commercial wastewater receiving station. So that'll go out at our lagoon site. Then followed by that is bypass assemblies for all stations. So this is a method of us being able to put in a valving system and a connection to the surface on the downstream side of a sanitary pump station. And what this allows us to do is to be able to pump into the force main. So in the event that we have the sanitary pump station is down for maintenance, for repairs, failure, whatever, we have the ability to hook up a pump drawing from the manhole that's immediately upstream of the station pushing it into the force main and bypassing the station. The benefit of that is that we do not have to use vac trucks in order to haul that material, which saves us considerable amount of money. It'll also help us when we go through and we do replacements on these sites in the future, is that we can actually bypass the station and remove it if necessary. Or as we're doing that transfer, we could actually connect the new one onto the bypass location and have the old one become the new bypass. So there's a few different options there for us. There are minimal costs in comparison to what it would cost us for numerous times where we have to do the bypassing of a station. So we thought that it was worthwhile for us to install these. Then we have the pump track. So that has been awarded, and we're just making some arrangements for some of the funding that's associated with that. The design build process is getting started as we speak. And we look to start construction on that in the spring. And then finally, for 2025, we have the Knight Creek culvert replacement. So this was originally proposed as an overflow culvert to be installed. So during freshet periods, it would have additional capacity in order to move water during those high flow times. After some environmental review and some discussions with some of the locals, we have decided that we are going to try to move in the direction of a multi-plate arch, and it has an open bottom on it. And this will allow it to be more fish friendly for spawning salmon to actually go up the stream. The current culverts are undersized and can cause some backups at periods of times. And then of course, with the amount of sediment and material that gets moved downstream, during freshet periods, these are slowly being impacted and closed off. So does anybody have any questions in regards to the 2025 projects?
Ben and I have been talking about, one of the key considerations when identifying 2025 projects is addressing inhibitions, the inhibitors to development. Regardless of the recent economic decision or announcements, there's actually a number of contractors and developers that are interested in doing some things here. And so we're saying, well, we don't want to have infrastructure where we're blacking out areas that's saying you can't add capacity here. So I'd asked Ben to put together a list of the developers, or you could just talk generally about that. I mean, some of them we have applications, some of them are just, it's kind of higher level than that. We don't have the applications yet, but I think it's kind of exciting to know that that people are still interested in making significant investments in the community.
Yeah, so there's a few approved developments that are, as far as I know, moving forward. 2172 Recreation Drive is 2 building permits issued for 2 6-unit townhouses. Each townhouse has a suite in it, and the development has a potential for 2 more buildings with the same number of units. Some new subdivision on Hargreaves. We've written a preliminary review letter. It's been issued for 20 lot subdivision. They're fully serviced lots, and they're nearing completion. I think the paving just needs to be done. There's a previous vacant lot that was purchased. A new modular home was installed at 314 Nietzsche Park. That's on well and septic. There's some proposed developments. 1513 Highway 16, Westco Gas has proposed the development of a gas station at the corner of Highway 16 and Brewster. We've received a subdivision application for Speedway Road, which is a 15-lot subdivision accessed off Speedway. This is designed with larger lots to accommodate private wells and septic systems. We've received a zoning amendment for 2824 Burrard Street. This is for a multifamily residential building. This is funded by BC Housing and contains 34 units for senior rental housing. We've also received an OCP and zoning amendment for 296 2nd Street West. They want to rezone from industrial to commercial. And if approved, this property will be developed into a laundromat. We've also received zoning and OCP amendment for 1133, 1145, and 1157 Industrial Drive. Proposed use of light industrial from residential. We've also issued demolition permit for 3231 Hospital Road to move the existing building for future upgrades and expansion of the hospital. And then there's been some discussions for possible development. There's been a development meeting between the owners of a property off the highway and district staff. The owners are proposing a hotel and restaurant to be built at this location. This use meets zoning and OCP, so it's pretty straightforward. We've also had development meetings between the owner of an existing mobile home park and district staff. The owner would like to upgrade and expand the mobile home park to maximize the permitted number of modular homes, make improvements to the property in an effort to add additional affordable rentals in this community. And lastly, there's been preliminary discussions with the property owner for future development of his property on Chaco Ave, which is zoned R5. The owner wants to establish formal access to the property for potential sale and development.
So, you know, the existing infrastructure, regardless of the age of it, there are definitely pinch points where council knows that prevent or restrict the amount of development both on the north side, but also to the west and to the south of Vanderhoof. So the projects that we picked for 2025 are intended to address most of those pinch points.
I just had a question about the quick save demolition and the United Church. Is it possible to combine those projects like with the same contractor?
Yes, it is possible for us to do it just because of the cost that's or the budgetary number that was brought forward in regards to the quick save. We may go out to tender on that in order to see if we can get a better price. It's quite high at this point, and so other than bringing the shock value to you right now, we want to make sure that we have something that's a little more palatable.
Okay. So you can't get like a 2-for-1 deal. That's what I was thinking, no.
It'd actually be a 3-for-1 because there's kind of two separate buildings on the other one.
Okay, all right, good, thanks.
Yeah, right now we do have the prices from the same contractor.
Okay,
so,
yeah. Jeez.
There's not a lot of options when it comes to
Right.
demolition. So
Sure, okay, thank you.
Other questions?
And so will these proposed projects address, like, will they satisfy some of the needs of the other projects that have, Ben has mentioned?
yeah, I think as Rod had mentioned is that these are kind of our major pinch points in our system right now.
Okay.
And so that's why these ones have kind of come to the
I
top,
see,
that we want to make sure that we address these as soon as possible.
because there's because there's interest. Good, great, thank you.
The other thing that I didn't mention on these is that we've still got the CN rail fencing to complete from where the CNC is to the recreation. And then we've got airport fencing to be installed as well. So moving on to 2026. So a number of these projects are actually combined. So the first one and the second one are the Burrard East Lane, literally right out behind us here. We had a video inspection that was done last year, and it was determined that there was a failure in the line. And so we were able to do a point repair, which is a lining that goes inside of it in order to hold everything in place. This is a short-term measure, and it allows the flow to continue while we make decisions and move forward with an actual replacement. The challenge with this site is that the water main was installed immediately below the sanitary line, which is not an ideal situation. So part of the project will be to separate those slightly. There is some distance requirements that Northern Health requires for us to do with that. But it's also, we get the economy of scale of being able to do both of them at the same time with the disruption once. Then we move on to Highway 16, and we've got a similar situation where we've got a sag in the line, the sanitary line, that is causing issues. And it's been monitored for a number of years, and the sag is starting to get worse. So with a sag in the line, heavy material will start to settle out of the flow and actually start to create a buildup. And then, of course, the size of the pipe gets reduced. And so in order to have that flow go through, it's having more of a challenge. So in order for us to fix that, we actually have to dig it up. So we put this into 2026 because it's going to take some time for us to go through MOE, our Ministry of Transportation application process. Plus, we're looking at some alternatives of possibly relocating it either into the laneway so that we can separate the water and the sewer, or relocating both of them into the laneway. That way we will not have to have our vac trucks sit out on the highway in order to do flushing and maintenance of that line. So those options are being investigated over the next year. Then we have the 3rd Street water main project. So that is actually supposed to be 2nd Street. So I apologize. I had one set of drawings that had 3rd Street and the other one had 2nd Street, and 3rd Street has been done. So 2nd Street is the completion of that main, which will extend it all the way from Fraser all the way to Pine. So this will complete that segment. Then we have North Side water plant upgrades. So the pump station and well electrical building is all 1970s vintage. So it doesn't have a lot of automated controls on it. Everything is very mechanical based on how it's operated, and it's due for replacement. So over the next year, we'll start on some engineering work to look at some options on how we would replace that and bring this up to the current municipal standards. So allowing us to have SCADA in place, having automated controls so that we have some redundancy in place, and putting in a gen set in order for us to have backup power. We currently have backup power for parts of it, but not all of it. The treatment aspect is in one building, the pumping system is in the other. So again, for the operator, it's very challenging. So trying to find some ways to bring that all together. And then following on that, Vanderview water main upgrades. So the water line that is installed along Vanderview is not at the same standard as we use typically in our municipal systems. It's okay for a private water system, but the quality of it is not going to meet the requirements of what we're looking for. So looking at the section from the station or the water treatment plant to the hospital, because there is discussions about an upgrade of the hospital at some point. So being able to put that redundancy in place and having that capability and making sure that we can get fire flow there, we can meet their demands, all of that will be looked at as part of that project. And then the CN rail fencing. That is a continuation of that project. We'll be going from grant funding in order to try to extend that fencing along one side of the railway going from Burrard down to Silversmith. So we'll see what kind of grant funding we can get on that. They cover 90%, I think it is, 80%. So there will be a contribution that will be required on our part. And then, as you can see, that's phase 1. So likely we'll continue with the other side and start working our way back. Anyone have any questions for the 2026?
It's exciting to see projects, right?
And so what I'd done is I'd created a future one for right now. So rather than earmarking it for specific years at this point, because we do have our utilities master plan that's coming in, We've got a few different studies that are being done at the current time. We're looking at trying to fill this up, and then we'll start to lay it out over the next 3 to 5 years so that we're starting to move forward on a longer term capital replacement program. So this is kind of a placeholder for now. And like I said, we'll add to this and get it into the following years. So the study that informed us that Northside Lift Station needed to be replaced also identified Recreation and Turner both as having to be replaced as well. So I've had some discussions with the design engineer. All of our stations are very similar as far as what their pumping requirements are. So we're trying to find some ways of being able to utilize that design across these other stations to minimize the cost, but also hopefully we can get a contractor that maybe will be able to do multiple years and be able to carry this through. So these ones will just be the lift station themselves. And again, replacing the wet well, the pumping system, the above ground kiosk for the valve chamber, and then a control building that will go along with it, depending on whether there's space available or not. Turner might be a little bit tight for that, but we'll take a look at that as we get closer to that one. Then I have Vanderview water main replacement. So this is extending from Hamilton where the current north side water is located, continuing it around the corner. This will help to create that backbone for our system. So that'll allow us to be able to have some confidence in the ability for us to get water out into those outlying areas, as well as to be able to facilitate some of the development that's happening further down on that line. Loop Road. So this hasn't come forward to you yet, but we've kind of started an investigation. There's a section along the Loop Road that has indicators of settlement. So I've asked a geotech engineer to start to take a look at that, and we can make some determinations on what needs to be done there. So I put that in place as a placeholder because I know that we're going to have to do something. Gary, driving along one day, realized that there was a speed bump there that wasn't there in previous years. So we've identified that as about 100 to 150 meter long section that has some indicators where it drops down for that segment. So we're looking at how we can deal with some sort of stabilization through that area. Recreation Trunk Avenue. So as was mentioned, there's some development that's happening along Recreation. And currently they're proposing to pump up and around. This would provide the opportunity for that flow to come this way, as well as anything that's kind of up the hill along 16 to actually be redirected and not have to go through the Butte pump station. The engineers have pushed back on us a little bit, thinking that it's not necessary, but any amount of flow that we can push down a line that we do not have to pump, that we do not have to pay additional costs for moving it is beneficial. So we'll either tie into a force main that's already existing on Stewart, or we will have to install a gravity siphon through that section in order for us to get to the lagoon system. That's to try to allow for anything that's kind of above where we've got current development on 7th and Nechako, as well as anything that's in the upper sections along Highway 16. Then we put the pickleball courts. We kind of push this out a little ways further. We don't have the funding available for right now, but we want to make sure that it's kind of captured and that we're going to continue to move that forward. And we got the CN rail fencing. I spelled it wrong on both of these. I don't copy and paste. Don't do it. It's fancy. Got a little bit of a twang in there. Again, that's to continue on with the additional fencing along the railway. And then we've captured the boat launch in there. It's been pushed off for now because we reallocated those funds towards the sewer receiving station. Any questions?
Well, I was just gonna say that you know, much of the buried infrastructure, not the mechanical things like lift station stuff. This stuff is 65 plus years old. The replacement of the buried infrastructure, like the sewer mains and the water mains and stuff, they could conceivably live past for 85 to 100 more years. So like these fixes are not temporary fixes. These are long-term fixes. None of us are going to be around to see them replaced in the future. And again, you know, we've started off saying these are multi-year. So just simple things like north side lift station, and then a crossing under the Nechako. So we've had a company working on the permitting to get under the Nechako, but then we get to the south side of the Nechako and it's ALR. So the line has to run through ALR to match up to Victoria. So we'd like to say that that line's going to go in this year, but we need to have permission to do that. It's spill into, it's anybody's guess, I guess is my point.
Mhm.
So just to manage expectations is that make our applications, but we've got to get past that hurdle to install that part of the project.
Got a few comments, maybe, but I'll open this up to anybody else first to,
Where on Loop Road was the slough there? On the hill there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the space that along the side, it's quite open. You can see out to the river.
yeah, and the reason I was asking about is I know that just with my work, our ICBC road test examiners very often ask people on a road test to pull over on that shoulder. That's why I was asking to do a, yeah, it's probably my fault, so. But, yeah, no, but the reason I wanted to mention it, if that's where it was, where I suspected it may well be, is because they ask us as far as to practice one of the skills people have to demonstrate on a road test, parking on, hill parking stuff. And I don't know if it gets bad enough, it sure would be nice to put a few markers or something there to not allow them to do that anymore.
It's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no. But I've suspected that a little bit too, just when we stopped there a lot.
I just want to say, I really find this is exciting. It's great to see it laid out. I love the format. I love having maps. I love the way it's explained. So, again, exactly, I think what we were all hoping for. None of this is sexy stuff. It's all underground and it's all water sewer, but that's great, and it's what we know we need to concentrate on. So great job, and I don't know if we could get some business card side laminated copies of these. It'd be nice to have in your back pocket for when somebody stops you on the
Yeah.
street and pull out and talk about it, right?
Yeah, I enjoyed that presentation too. It's very informative. It's good.
Any other questions or comments? Right.
At this time, I just wanted to check with council if there are any projects that council has for projects that they would like to be put forwards, or if you're thinking about that hasn't been covered in this list that you'd like us to look at or for future years. So if there's something you'd like to let us know about, now would be good.
Thanks for asking that question, Margaret. Just a second here. Okay. I've got 36 projects. No, I've got maybe two. And one comes right out of right field, but it's coming from a good place. And the fact that I'd really like to have us look, and not this year, but before I pass away, the new columbarium at the graveyard. What we have out there is just a single thing. And I've been to other communities where they have, it's beautiful in Quesnel. There's parks and benches and all of these things. So I think we need to give some thought to that. It doesn't need to be, priority, but And then the only other one was, I think we've heard it a couple times now, is we need to work with the highways to get sidewalks up Highway 16 somehow. It is dangerous for those folks to be coming up and down that hill, and that traffic is really, seems to have increased. So again, not a priority for this year, but maybe we can work with highways and figure out how we can get that. I knew it never got approved, or it seems like it never got approved because of snow clearing was an issue, because then you're clearing that entire 4 lanes onto sidewalks. But we got to get past that and allow people to get up and down that hill in a safe manner. So those are the two that I had. Thanks.
So Lozzie,
Yeah, so I thought I had seen it on one of our capital plans and I didn't look at 5-year capital plans, but I'm just wondering about Riverside Park. I thought that there was some playground equipment that was slated as a project, and yeah, that would be the only thing to look at, making it a really creative and interesting space if we're looking at putting more equipment there.
Just to tag on to both of the last two presenters or the commentators, going up towards Site that hill there that we've never really been able to fully address that. And it's historically, it's been a terrible situation for us to try and do fix. And it's still an issue in terms of going up that hill safely. And I know we do have buses and things going up and down, but if people are walking up there, it's very narrow. And it's actually quite a hill to navigate when it's cold and icy and this time of year. So to have people walking on it compounds that. So something we could do there. Then also, I know I talked to Mayor in the summer about this a little bit down in Riverside as well. That, you know, I think we could host more events and do other things if we had actually a larger covered area there. And to maybe look at that. A lot of communities our size and a little bit bigger, but actually much larger covered areas. And so, not that we don't appreciate what's there, but I think there's been quite a few events I know I was able to attend over the last couple of years that had really beautiful covered areas that I don't think we'd have to spend a lot of money because they're not walls, they're not buildings, but they're covered areas. So maybe something that we could look at there. I know it's way too quick of a turnaround time, but it should be nice to have something maybe going on when we're looking towards our 100 years here next year, right? So that would be a major project, but it's only a year away. And anyway, those are a couple of things that you guys spoke in mind that we discussed earlier as well.
anybody else? I have a few minor things, but I'll send them in an email to you, Margaret. And get them that way. Awesome. Is that it for budget this level? We're good? Then I guess we're adjourned.